All right, thank you for joining us today. And I will call the June 9th, 2022 meeting of the Fargo Police Advisory and Oversight Board into order. So let's begin with the board members stating their name for an introduction. And then I think online we have Scott Paul, right? And I think we don't have Todd online. Okay.
I'm on the phone.
Okay, all right. Todd Spellberg is online. Scott Paul's joining us remotely. Absent today would be Thomas Conrad, and Lucretia King. Right.
Okay, Dave Hoganson.
Joanna Johnson, Chair.
Tanya Graywin.
Okay, so the next item is to approve the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve it.
Okay, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right. Anyone opposed say no? Okay, motion's carried. The next item is to approve the minutes from the May 11th, 2022 meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I approve those minutes.
Second. Okay. Those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, opposed nay. All right, motion carried. The next item is public comment. Those who wish to address the Police Advisory and Oversight Board must sign in on the sign-in sheet and state their names. You'll be limited to 2 minutes, and please, no profanity or personal attacks. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment today?
Yes, we have one.
Okay. And can I remind you to state your name when you come up?
Yeah, I'm Christopher Cohen, C-O-E-N. I'm a Fargo resident. And, I wish these could be 2.5-minute comment periods because that's what's standard at the city commission meetings. It's hard to even get it all in 2.5 minutes. But what I wanted to talk about was the May 30th, 2020 downtown melee that has never really been investigated or looked at. No, we haven't looked into what we think the police did right and what they did wrong, and why not. That was one of the biggest crises to hit this city in a long time. We're still reeling from it. And I brought this idea to the city commission, and I kind of got blank stares. But those are elected officials, and they're very sensitive to the political power of the police. And I think maybe this board would be ideally suited to looking into that. I mean, I wasn't there, but I watched hours and hours worth of video of what happened. And I wanted to quote one of the protesters from a forum article. And he said that when the demonstrators came into downtown Fargo that evening, he said police had already formed a line across First Avenue North. Now, Moorhead Police Chief David Ebinger said fear is a factor police have to be mindful of in dealing with disorderly crowds. When officers don intimidating riot gear, their appearance alone could stir trouble. If you show up with that gear and you don't have a riot, you're inviting one. The best weapon we have is our ability to communicate. And other things. What about the use of tear gas? We had pets and young children, families with young children who were tear gassed. The whole downtown area was filled up with tear gas. And the tear gas was used during the pandemic when people's lungs can be irritated, and irritated, they'll cough out more and could have spread the virus. So we should look at the policy. And there's a bunch of other factors regarding that, what happened there. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So the next item is on the agenda for today is the department updates. And we'll begin with Chief Zabowski, who will speak about the Fargo Police Department Wellness Program. And then Sergeant Jacobson will also speak on the upcoming community events.
Good evening, Board. unfortunately, it's not as exciting as I anticipated, because Monday's commission meeting will actually be rolling out the video on our new mental health checks and that our wellness committee put together. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do that this evening and wreck the commission's mojo, if you will. But suffice it to say that we have moving ahead on a process to put annual mental health checks into our organization for all our sworn and civilian staff. We're working with a group of police psychologists through the International Association of Chiefs of Police Psychology section. So we've been able to greatly expand our resources in that area, and that would help facilitate these annual mental health checks as well as some other improvements to our overall wellness.
All right, you'll be talking about this next week, you said?
Yeah, I'm 99% certain that at Monday's commission meeting, one of the presentations there will be the video of this, that the Wellness Committee did talking about this. And then we'll talk a little more with commission about it. And then I'll be able to keep you updated, but we're making some significant strides there.
Okay. Sergeant Jacobson?
Sure. Or just friendly reminders of some of the things that are upcoming that are also listed in the calendar within your binder, but you are also more than welcome to join us. Just a reminder that members of the community engagement team and the Fargo Police Department will be doing an outreach and educational safety booth at Midwest Kid Fest, which is tomorrow. If you do attend or intend to attend, that we would request an email confirmation so that we don't ever gain a quorum unbeknownst to us. So that's tomorrow. And then we will also be doing an outreach educational booth at the Juneteenth event, which is actually being held on Saturday, the 18th. So if you are interested in joining us at that, please email me. We will have, of course, our major Fargo Police Department event every year of our police picnic from 5 to 8 on the 29th of June from 5 to 8 p.m. at Urban Plains Park. Even, we just highly encourage all of you to come and walk around and experience that. So there's that. And then lastly, before our next meeting, we will be running a lot of educational booths pertaining to the street fair, which is the 14th, 15th, and 16th of July. And so you're welcome to hang out with us at our engagement/safety booth. We do have our meeting that evening of the 14th, but we will be there all day, the 14th, the 15th, and the 16th. And so that's the June and July major events prior to our next meeting.
Okay. Are there any other questions or items on the department updates?
No questions for you.
All right. The next item is a presentation on the Fargo Police Department SRO program and the active killer response protocol. And this will be presented by Sergeants Christy Jacobson and Thomas Shaw.
So, in light of the tragedy that recently occurred in South Texas, we're just going to give you a little bit of an overview of what we currently have here in Fargo and what our role is in the various different situations. So first, we're just going to start at a very vague and broad understanding of what a school resource officer is and how they fall within the organizational chart within the Fargo Police Department. So you know our vision, mission, and values within the police department. So neighborhood services, which is often known as patrol, has a group of specialized services that is overseen by Lieutenant Alfelt, and that encompasses our community engagement team, our community services officers, K-9, peer support, you name it, it's all listed up there. And so that's where we fall under. And then community engagement specifically is what I supervise, and within that we have 7 school resource officers. We have 3 community trust officers and 1 cultural liaison officer, and then we have a whole host of additional engagement, trust building, and collaborations with the Fargo School District. And so I liaison with our elementary school administration. The school district has what they call their student wellness family facilitators and their counselors. I engage and meet with them almost monthly. I liaison with the school district office and the school board, of which I also give presentations to the school board. We problem solve when it comes to student attendance, behavioral issues. We have a Cass-Clay Unified School Response Program where administrations, legal officials, and school resource officers all meet to problem solve and discuss changes in the law or response and programming, things like that. We are part of the North Dakota Association of School Resource Officers, and we do a whole host of a bunch of different outreach educational programming to do as much trust building and engagement and providing resources to our community members, specifically our young people. And we are currently in the process of developing an educational diversion program for young people who commit low-level criminal offenses so that we can still hold them accountable, but through an educational outlet so that they don't have to be absorbed into our criminal justice system and be sent to juvenile court. And so we'll have more information coming about that in the future, but that is a major project that we are committed to. So, and more specifically, just talking about the role of a school resource officer. So our goal is to provide a safe learning environment for everyone in the Fargo School District. We provide valuable resources to our school staff through relationship building, but also bringing an outside perspective to the team. Our overall purpose, of course, is safety, but it is not just physical safety and our physical presence. We deal with emotional safety and mental health complexities and concerns, and we just really want to be part of the wraparound services to make sure that our young people are successful. We have access to resources within the community, or we can be conduits to those resources within the community and bring different perspective to the table so that ultimately the best case scenario and outcome for the young person, for their safety, their parents, the school, their education, you name it, we really work hard to empower the child but also empower the parent and find that appropriate balance between holding them accountable to their decision making but also educating them to make better decisions and understanding that their decisions have potential consequences and that their actions and their words matter in both a positive and or a negative way. And so really there's so much more to the relationship that we have in this school than just our physical presence as a law enforcement officer. And so our school resource officers are trained. We follow the NASRO triad concept, and NASRO stands for the National Association of School Resource Officers. So we are trained and licensed peace officers within the Fargo Police Department, and then on top of that, we attend the training to be certified school resource officers through NASRO. So before they're authorized to be in the school as a school resource officer, they attend SRO Basic. That's the name of the qualifying course. After that, then we send them to the advanced course, and then we have continuing education that we provide to them intermittently throughout their rotation in the schools. And so some of those responsibilities, obviously we talked about the safety. We are a law enforcement officer. We do a lot of presentations and education within the buildings, and those ebb and flow depending on the middle school needs and the high school needs. But we do a lot of education on a variety of law-related topics. And then, of course, that relationship building, informal counselors, mentors, really just being there for the individual, whether they're struggling, they just need another adult with a varying perspective. But that's kind of that triad concept of the role. So of course, our goal every day is to develop strategies to resolve problems affecting young people. We really analyze gaps in services within the community, or we research if gaps are being met by other community resources, and then we put the right people in the right place so that those individuals are getting access to those resources. But we really want to teach the value of our legal system. We, of course, reduce crime, holding kids accountable, Teaching students also how to reduce their own likelihood of becoming a victim, you name it, positive attitudes. There's anywhere from 800 to 1,100 or 14 in some of our larger schools of individuals, of students and or staff that we take that relationship building very seriously so that they feel trusted and they feel comfortable and they feel that they have a voice in that understanding about the role in law enforcement and why we're in the schools. And it's not just about physical safety, but it is, and it's also about holding kids accountable and documenting situations, but really being a part of the total success team of our young people in general. And we do that. We've also, by analyzing some of those gaps in services, we as part of the community engagement team, we do provide educational resources and programming. We have extensive programming over the summer while school is out. We've talked about that briefly in the past. We run our outdoors programs for young people. We have New American Survival swim lessons. We run kickboxing, boxing, self-defense. And these are resources where typically community organizations, often their school counselors and social workers, will refer them to our programming with the intent to keep them active physically, provide them with positive peer engagement, and then the dual mentor role because a law enforcement officer is present, but then also a coach who is the subject matter expert in whatever the course that is being given to them, so that we're just really providing additional resources because and it is at no cost to the young people, and it's really helping them reset after typically going through a rocky period in their life or in their circumstances, and we just really want to provide some of those resources for them. And so those are examples of the ways that we've analyzed and attempted to determine if we could fill those gaps, and we do that in those types of ways. So questions a little bit?
One question I had was, you said the population of the schools vary anywhere from 800, maybe up higher, 11, 1,400. Is one resource officer enough with the varied population?
So we have the comprehensive collaborative mindset amongst the community engagement team that we have a team approach. And so our community trust officers are also cross-trained as school resource officers. And then, of course, our school resource officers assist with the trust officer programming and their outreach and engagement efforts. And so when things are busier at one school versus another, we collaborate and work together amongst the community engagement team. And I'm a trained former school resource officer now that I oversee that. And so I also come into those schools and we really just assist and stabilize. And then we have kind of partner groups, Discovery would be partnered with Davies because they're the feeder schools, and Carl Ben with South, and Ben Franklin with North, and those kinds of things. And so we collaborate and have great working relationships. And we are also very blessed as a police department that our patrol officers are really engaged with knowing what our trust officers and our school resource officers are doing as well. And so they stop in and we provide supports and services and back up to each other in a variety of different roles as well. So when there are things that are a little bit more time consuming or things are just a little bit busier in one school versus another, we utilize resources amongst the teams to make sure that the situations are being handled appropriately.
Do the officers have an office, or is it designed that they are mobile
Nope.
and moving around the building?
They do have offices. Like I said, we have a phenomenal relationship with our school district. We are very happy with the collaborations. And so at the 3 middle schools and 4 high schools, our officers are given their own office within the buildings. Yes.
And so they're able to obviously move around the building. There's not any, that's a way to kind of get to know the students, and maybe any, some collaboration if there was any warning signs or anything that might occur to somebody who maybe seems unstable or
Sure.
aggressive.
So the relationship building is instrumental into their success as a school resource officer. So it's typically they would start out really building that collaborative relationship with the administration of their building, because they're obviously the subject matter experts to the building and going ons behind the scene and all of those types of things. And so often our new SROs will really work on engaging with that relationship piece. And then from there, they often start with our teachers or the individuals that are known to have higher level needs within the buildings, and that ebbs and flows depending on the building. And so you start to relationship build with them so that you can proactively develop a positive relationship instead of waiting till the child experiences some type of trauma or crisis, and so that that's not their first interaction engagement with us. And then after that, of course, it's physical presence and trust building with all of the students in the building altogether. And that's by, just like you said, it's their physical presence. They're walking the halls. They're there during class turnover. They're standing out there during lunch breaks, and they're relationship building and getting to know them. And then they are regularly presenting in the classrooms. So we do a lot of presentations about drugs, alcohol, tobacco. We analyze some of the things that we're seeing in the community. We've done some major projects surrounding mental health and the complexities of suicide and suicide ideation. And so some of those presentations have come in. We have collaborative relationships with the school district where we have brought what we call our assemblies programs into the school, which helps spotlight the role of the SRO to the student body and all of those types of things. So we are intentional about picking our SROs. They apply for it, and the administrator of the building typically sits in on those interviews as well, so that we have the right fit of an officer who is outgoing and really passionate about engaging and working with young people and understanding the intricacies of the juvenile court system, because it's very different than the adult system. And we have to go in knowing that young people are gonna make mistakes, that they're going to be curious and a little bit adventurous and make mistakes along the way. And so there's that understanding and recognizing that we still, yes, need to hold them accountable, but we need to really relationship build and educate when they make those mistakes, and letting them also know that this bump in the road will not hold them back to future successes, and explaining that to them as well. So
I've got another question.
Quick question. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So being safe and feeling safe can be two different things, I think. And so in light of the tragedy in Texas and the interactions that the officers are having with students, how are students feeling? Do they bring concerns to officers? Are they feeling safe? Are they scared? What do they talk about?
I think we are intentional about having those frank conversations. Obviously, the context and how that conversation goes will be dependent upon the age of the building. And so my high school SROs are having far more frank conversations with their young people. But we are also having phenomenal relationships with the safety staff and the administration within the school district to ensure that their staff are trained up, that they understand school safety policy and protocol, and the working relationship that we have with them, so that the young people are educated and that we are answering their questions and that we are available for those questions and concerns. We're also doing that for parents as well. Of course, when parents have questions and concerns, we answer those as often as possible. We try to hold forums if that's what's being requested of us. We will always meet the need of the student and the parent and the administration when it is brought forth to us and we have the ability to do it, and we've done it in a variety of different ways.
Have you ever conducted like surveys or anything like that with the students to just sort of measure the, I don't know if the right word would be, impact of the programs that you guys conduct in the schools? Or I mean, do you have measures to show how the programs are helping or working in the schools?
You're talking about our outside of the school programming?
No, I'm talking about the things that are the presentations that are happening with the students, or the different things that you're doing in the schools.
The different schools have chosen to handle that differently. Some schools have, yes, done surveys and talked about some of the questions amongst the survey giving have pertained to their feelings of safety, their relationship with the SRO, all of those kinds of things. And other schools have chosen not to, but we are intentional with making sure that we as the leadership in the police department are having good relationships with the administration of both the individual buildings, but also the district office. And so the feedback of, are they happy with the school resource officer? Are they happy with their engagement and their efforts? And how can we improve? And how can we meet your needs? Because the needs of each individual building, though parallel, can be different, and how they want that resolved will also be dependent upon the administration. And so it varies by building, but we try to do our best to make sure that the district office and the individual administration of each individual building is happy with the work that we provide. Sure. And Lieutenant Ulfeld and I meet monthly with the 2 assistant superintendents regularly. I'm at the school board meetings, and I know that Dr. Gandhi also has a great collaborative working relationship with Chief Zabolski as well, so that we have kind of all of our areas covered if there were questions or concerns to be brought forth.
Christy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm on the phone, so I didn't know if I was gonna butt in. I do work at Discovery, and I've been there for 17 years, and I've never met a bad SRO. You guys do an exceptional job in our schools. The one question I have is, I've been there a long time, and until I took the training, I had no clue about your summer program. Is there a way that you guys could try to make this available for all kids rather than a select few? Because I even talked to colleagues and nobody had a clue about all the great things to do with a certain number of kids. But to the average kid walking around in the school, they have no clue about your summer programming.
So first, we appreciate that you're happy with the role and the work of our school resource officers. Second, I think we would love to meet the need of every student and to have every student in the district come through our programming in a variety of ways. The reality is we don't have the resources, the time, the staff, or the funding in order to do an extensive amount of expansion to that. And so when we had to have those hard conversations and questions on, because we had to limit it, who do we target? And we targeted, maybe that sounds like the wrong word. We focused on our kids that had higher level needs. I hate to say that, that they were in crisis, because that's not always the case, but we really tried to develop that relationship with the counselors and the social workers of the building, and so the referrals came from them for the kids that were showing signs of struggle, of being at risk in some capacity or another, so that they also then have to be willing to agree to it. The family also has to be willing to agree to it. The schedule has to align, those kinds of things. So I think if we have the ability to expand our programming, we would try to, but at this point in time, I don't foresee that happening.
Even getting the word out, though, that you're doing this.
Sure.
Does that make sense? Nobody knows about this summer programming, other than, I don't know about any other board members, but until we sat through that training, I'm guessing most of us didn't have a clue of all the great things you're doing with these focused students.
I know
that would
that.
Be
Sure. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. I know that
that's a great thing in the community.
The city communications team and their PIO roles and responsibilities, I know that we are doing our best to increase that level of awareness throughout the community. And so Katie Eddish and Greg and his team are overworked and overwhelmed, but overwhelmingly awesome. And so I know that they are going to be doing a lot more public relations to really getting that word out to the community. I know that they just did a recent one about our New American Survival swim lessons, and so they have a detailed schedule of all of the various programmings that we're hosting over this summer and the engagement educational booths so that they can get a lot of feed, pictures, video, and those kinds of things with the intention of improving that, because that's what we do hear a lot. I had no idea you were doing such great things, and so we are trying to improve that.
And I think if I
Even to get video clips out to the principals so they can put it in their newsletter.
Sure.
Because parents read newsletters, and I have not seen anything like that in the newsletters.
Yeah. And I was just going to comment that when I was talking about surveys, I think a lot of what that was sort of the focus, not necessarily on the improvements, but more on awareness and knowledge and what's all out there and what the impacts are of the things that you guys are doing in the schools. Mainly, it comes back to funding, and it comes back to resources, not only for the schools, but also for your program. And so if you have that sort of data to support that, then that would help increase the access for students.
Sure. And a couple weeks ago, we gave our very first presentation to the school board, making them aware of the programs as well. And they kind of had the same feedback. I had no idea. And so we are going to be more conscientious of doing that. We have been invited to play a little bit stronger of a role in contributing articles and information to the school publications and the journey and those kinds of things. And so it is our goal to take the school district up on all those opportunities.
And so a student that may participate in the programs could come about, the SRO officer could select a student and recommend that, or it could be an ask from a parent or a teacher.
It's typically not from a parent, unless we're engaging with them for another reason. But the majority of the referrals come from the school social workers, counselors, the administration, or the school resource officers. So that administrative relationship that are made aware of those kids that are struggling in one manner or not, and then bringing that referral to us, yes.
Quick question. Sorry, I got disconnected for a minute. So if you already answered this, just tell me to go away. The use of force policy. Is there any specific language for SROs and use of force, or specific to juveniles or anything like that, or is it just a blanket use of force policy?
So the training for school resource officers when it comes to use of force is the same within our policy. So the school district has their own response to resistance. However, we are very intentional about our training to ensure that we are handling our situations within our school districts in a very delicate and appropriate manner depending on the circumstance and the situation. And so we are constantly evaluating training, having conversation when it comes to that response based on the behaviors of the children. But we have also had very, very strong conversations with our school district administration on their perspective and their wants and what role law enforcement will have within their buildings. And we have found a really great balance in that type of thing. But like I said, and Todd, as a school teacher, would have training with response that we as police officers in the building, we do not have those same expectations for our responses, which is why we are very intentional about making sure that our response has to do with a criminal element and a major safety concern. And we are not in any way responding to school rules and school laws and or school handbook issues. We do not touch those at all. So there has to be a major safety concern. There has to be a major law violation for the role of the officer to step in. And even if there's an overt even serious illegal act that occurs, when we hold children accountable to those, and even if it's being documented with a criminal report, and in the majority of documented criminal reports involving juvenile, the child is released back into the care of their parent. So I'm not sure if that was kind of where you were going with it. Did I answer that? But
I just wanted to make sure there's no specific policy for SROs and use of force or anything like that. It's covered in the training. It's covered in the relationship with the school and the district.
correct.
Okay.
There's not a specific subsection of use of force that only applies to a school resource officer within a school setting. No, but
Okay.
we make sure that officers are trained appropriately and keeping in mind we go to training when it comes to the development of the youth brain, and we go to training about mental health concerns and complexities that specifically pertain to young people, and how we can verbally de-escalate situations and also collaboratively meet the needs of those kids when they're escalated, and recognize backstories, which is why that relational piece is so key for us, and why we go into those relationships prior to the crisis situation, so that the role in the relationship can be present to de-escalate the situation without any type of a physical response required by law enforcement officers, is our ultimate goal.
And sorry, one more quick question, and I don't expect you to have the exact answer on statistics or anything like that, but ballpark, can you give us any sort of number of how many arrests were made by an SRO in the last school year? We talking, small numbers or 50?
And so let me make some clarifications. So, like I said, physical arrests, as in taken to a facility, the only location that we would have available to us would be our detention center. And so that would be what you would consider, or the public would typically think of when they consider a physical arrest, or like a physical detention of a juvenile. And that happens very, very infrequently. And so there's, in fact,
Infrequently, single digits in a year? Is that,
and
what sort of numbers?
coming from the schools, I would say, taking out like pickup orders coming from their probation officers and things like that, I would say single digits.
Okay.
But like I said, because there's also, we have to go through a detention screening tool that articulates and determines what's the level of offense, what is the criminal history, what is the available resources, all of those types of things, because we recognize how traumatic it can be to be in a juvenile detention locked facility. And so there all has to be a very high level form of violent offense typically. And we also are very attentive to the age of the individual and what is their own potential criminal history as well. And so when you take out those things where they had a pickup order from a previous probation officer thing, I would say almost all, when a criminal offense occurs within the school, that we escalated to a point where the school chose not to handle it internally and did involve the police. In almost every circumstance, the criminal offense is documented with a report, but the child is released back into the care of their parent. And community resources are then put in place for the child and the family for long-term services to meet the need, whether it's chemical dependency, mental health, behavioral, those types of things.
Thank you.
All right, maybe one last clarification. There is no security that's specific to the door of the school, like the officer moves about the building, so it's not like somebody's manning the door.
our Fargo police officers are not the door guards at
Right.
any of our schools.
Right.
That is for sure.
Yeah.
We have offices and we are walking around. We are relationship building. We are in the classroom a lot. We monitor the lunch periods, but we do that collaboratively with their other administrators in the buildings.
Okay.
So when you walk into the school, you are not, the first face that you see is not the police officer. Some of the high schools have their, an individual for you to, available for outside staff or community members to sign in and out. And so sometimes the officer might be conferring or working with them, but it is not our role to man the doors at our schools in any way.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
So moving on, and the second part of the presentation really is just to discuss, not specifically in response to tragedies within a school, but just to also equip you with the knowledge of how police officers in the entire department, to include our school resource officers, are trained when we are responding to those active threats in the community, whether it's at a school or any other location. So I'm going to turn this over to Sergeant Shaw, who's one of our members on our training team.
Thanks, Christy. Hello, good evening. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
A couple of you, but I'm sure I'll see you again. So what I'm going to go over today are just some real basic fundamentals of our priorities when it comes to responding to critical incidents. I will talk about active killers, but I'll also talk about hostage events, bomb issues, and kind of give you a little bit of an idea of what our goal is when we respond to those types of incidents. The first thing I want to discuss is the acronym that you'll see there. It's called the HIPS concept. When we respond to a critical incident, whether that be an active killer, a hostage event, or a bomb threat, we take that acronym to the extreme when it comes to planning our different actions on those scenes. The HIPS concept stands for hostages, involved citizens or bystanders, the police, and the suspects. So when we make decisions on those critical incident calls, hostages being the most important, suspect being the least, our actions are based off of who we need to benefit. If hostages are present, there has already been somebody who has restrained them, has made some type of threat towards them, so they are in immediate danger at that point. Involved citizens or bystanders could be people that might be in the building but not directly in the path of danger, or they could be people across the street in residences or apartment buildings. The law enforcement officers, and that's Fargo Police Department or any other mutual aid agreement agencies that would respond to one of these critical incidents, would be third on the list, and the suspect would be the fourth. So as we get into discussing each of those critical incidents, try to keep that HIPS concept in mind. So we'll discuss the active killer response first. Our immediate need when we respond to a scene like that is we need to stop whatever the threat is as soon as absolutely possible. Whether there have been casualties created by our perpetrator or not, our first number of officers going into that scene need to focus on neutralizing that threat. If we started to render aid immediately to any injured parties, our threat is continually engaging civilians. So our first few groups of officers going into that environment are going to focus solely on neutralizing that threat. Our next step is going to be rendering aid and making sure that our officers who have been trained in what we call tactical combat casualty care are applying tourniquets, pressure bandages, helping the walking wounded get out of the area and out to our officers on the extremity of that environment so they can get either reunified with family, co-workers, or friends who are looking for them, or if they need further medical attention, that they can get to hospitals and emergency rooms. We do that in coordination with the Fargo Fire Department. A number of years ago, we started training together to be able to go into that environment while it's not necessarily completely clear. There is still a risk to the firefighters who are unarmed, essentially, that they could be injured, but we are going to bring them in with us so they can start rendering aid to civilians and helping us get them out as quickly as possible so we can get them the medical attention that they need. Sanford Ambulance is also playing a big part of that with us too. They essentially are going to be on the outside of these environments, moving wounded people out to the medical facilities. The medical facilities also practice what is called surge exercises. So if we had a major incident with a lot of casualties, these hospitals can put the pieces in place that they need to start accepting large amounts of injured persons. Once we are able to settle down the scene a little bit, we make sure that our suspect or suspects have been taken care of as far as arrested, or if they need medical aid after we've encountered them, we can get them that medical aid. Then we will start our crime scene processing and investigation into the actual crime itself. Before I move on into hostage events and bomb threats, do you have any specific questions on active killer events?
I have a question.
Sure.
So the local PD in Texas is under a lot of heat for not acting fast enough. And from what I read, I believe law enforcement's position is to confront the threat as quickly as possible. And I think in Texas, they're facing criticism because they did not. There was a lag time there. How do you determine how to do that? When to wait, when to just go in? How does that work?
If we have what we train and call a driving force, which means we believe that there is an actual threat, we believe that there are innocent people at risk of being injured or already have been injured, we are no longer going to wait at that point. You may have heard the term barricaded suspects in the past. If we had initially responded to an active killer event, but know that our suspect is now barricaded by themselves, we probably aren't going to rush at that point. If there is any information that there would be innocent civilians in there, that suspect is actively engaging, there's no waiting at that point. We will go in there immediately, regardless of how many people we have with us at the time. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Any other questions about the active killer events? Okay. We'll move into the hostage events, and they can sometimes be linked to active killer events as well. I won't comment on Uvalde as I haven't read the factual case. It's still being processed. I'm looking forward to seeing that brief, but there was discussion that at one point our perpetrator had gone into a room of students and eventually engaged them with a firearm. We need to realize that there is a difference between an active killer and a hostage event. If it's a hostage event, we have the perpetrator. They have innocent people with them that they are not allowing to leave. They have the means to hurt them, but usually in a hostage event, that perpetrator is making a demand for something. They want any number of items in lieu of hurting the hostages. Those can be perpetrated after an active killer event happens. A hostage event can go from being very static during a negotiation phase to our perpetrator now actively engaging the civilians, in which case we would then act as if that event was an active killer. We now know that we have somebody who is actively engaging innocent people, and we would immediately make entry. The vast majority, statistically speaking, of hostage events are successfully negotiated to the point where the hostages are released. If we didn't think that the hostages were in imminent danger of being injured, we would certainly attempt negotiations to try to get that peacefully resolved. But as soon as we don't feel that that is a reality any longer, and the longer we wait, those civilians could be killed or injured, we are going to move at that time. Any questions on hostage events at all? I know I'm going over these very broadly, but okay. On to bomb threats. These are something where oftentimes it turns into a phone call to our dispatch center saying there is a device at such and such a location. Our officers will respond there to see what is going on in that area. If any devices are located that possibly match the description of what the caller gave us, we would then use a canine that we do have that is specifically trained in the odor of explosives to run it by that item. If that dog would alert, we would potentially be getting hold of our Red River Valley bomb team, and they can come out with all of the technology and information that they have in order to assess what that item is and then dispose of it at a later time. The biggest thing with the bomb threats is first deciding if this is a valid incident or if it's somebody just making a prank call. I have been with our agency since 2003. I haven't had a valid bomb device yet that I have been part of. So luckily we haven't had that issue. One of the other things I'll mention on the bomb threats too is because we don't know what certain devices are when we respond to those scenes, the community will see us try to cordon off a pretty large area to make sure that if it is an actual explosive, that nobody's injured when it goes off. And this area is typically a lot larger than what people initially think it would be. We're erring on the side of caution until we can make sure that that device is inert or disposed of, and then we will let everybody go back to where they belong. Any questions at all?
So anytime you have an active killer, does that, I guess that could always turn into a hostage
Sure.
event,
Mhm.
right?
Yes. Yeah, it could turn into a hostage event. It could turn into our perpetrator just going into a portion of a building and barricading themselves and not doing anything. In that case, our focus then is going to, again, turn back to anybody that may be left in that environment, making sure that they get out. It usually would not take us as many resources to deal with a barricaded suspect as it would for a hostage event or an active killer. Mm-hmm. So in a way that benefits us a little bit, helps us get people out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Oh, go ahead.
Right.
It's a really broad question regarding school safety.
Mm-hmm.
There are a number of people that feel that properly trained educators and school staff should be carrying firearms to address a threat. Does the Fargo PD have any kind of an opinion or a position on school staff, educators carrying weapons in buildings?
Let me, thank you. Yes, to the rescue. This is a school district question, actually, and not a police department question, so I wouldn't comment one way or the other on it. If that's something that the school district wanted or wanted our assistance in conducting training, that would have to be something we would talk about.
So no position at this time. It would be solely with the school district.
Right, in terms of, yes, it would be their decision in terms of if they wanted to do something like that, because you're talking about teachers and liability for them and safety and all of that. So we work strictly within our memorandum of understanding, which we could also provide the board a copy of, that has a lot of these other things outlined in them in terms of our parameters and, where we're involved and where we're not involved. It's something like that. It's really their facility, and that would be a policy decision by the school district board, I'm guessing with support from the administrator. And then a discussion with us about how that might be implemented, I would imagine.
So should the school district look at something like that, my guess is they would seek your counsel to better understand ramifications of that. How would the PD respond to that?
Yeah, I would think so. We'd certainly be open to any of those discussions with them, but it is ultimately their decision. if they want to do something like that. And they don't have to consult with us, I guess, would be the other piece. But we'd certainly be open to any discussions with them along those lines, sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. The next part on our agenda is a discussion item. We're going to kind of clarify maybe the term subset that was used in the last meeting in regards to the board and the Fargo Police Department.
Sure. So some background and context to the next 2 points on the discussion was we had dialogue about the board creating a mission statement. And I apologize for a poor word choice when it comes to you are not a subset of the Fargo Police Department, but we also consulted with our city attorney to really just answer your questions and to clarify your technical position. But it is also very clearly written out in, ordinance as well.
So, hi, thank you. So I would concur that the use of the word subset was probably not intentional in terms of there is no direction from the police to the Police Advisory Board. You are an independent body who has been appointed by the City Commission and can make recommendations to the City Commission for action. It's simply that the Police Department is staffing this committee to provide information at your request, information that you might find helpful in making any further recommendations to the City Commission, but not a subset, an independent body with recommendations directly to the City Commission if you so choose.
When we were having the conversation about mission statement, it was just more of your mission of the Police and Advisory and Oversight Board should not be so drastically different than the mission of the Fargo Police Department in general, but that was kind of where my thought process was coming, and I do apologize for the poor word choice if that confused you.
Thank you.
And then the next question pertaining was to the mission statement is we had some back and forth about the need to have your own independent mission statement, and did you feel comfortable creating it so new in the creation of the board? And you had asked specifically, David, if it would be possible to have kind of like the equivalent of a subcommittee developed so that you could work on it and then bring forth some recommendations to the rest of the board, but you had concerns and questions about quorum and those types of things. So again, I'm going to turn this over to Nancy.
So, and again, thank you for the question. We've had open meeting discussions. This falls right into that category of, is this an open meeting? I would say I am recommending to you, if you have a quorum or a designated number of members, even if it's less than a quorum, that are designated with the task of developing any policy for recommendation first to this committee and then forward to the City Commission if that's your choice, that subcommittee would also be considered a meeting of the members of your Police Advisory and Oversight Board, and therefore should be noticed and held in public, minutes taken, and an agenda established. So yes, you would want to have that. It could immediately follow your meeting. If you're designating members of this group to do that, you could set that up as a subcommittee. They could meet and discuss the item that is designated to that subcommittee for recommendation.
All right, so if we're working on the mission statement and two members got together to kind of go over a bunch of ideas, and then bring it to the meeting, how is that working with the open records law? Is that correct, David? Yeah.
Yep.
Right, so you would not then have a quorum, and they would not have been designated by this body to do that. So you are not setting up a separate committee then that would be meeting. Hard to notice that, but I would recommend that if you are doing that and you're kind of deciding what two members should be doing that, that two members is a committee and should be meeting in a open forum.
Okay. All right. And if members just randomly met up, that's totally different. It's not breaking any open. Right.
That's correct, as long as you don't have a quorum and that you don't involve a quorum. So if you have two members meeting and then you ask another member what they think and that person asks another member, even if they've not talked to the other two, that could result in a meeting violation.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Any other topics? We're kind of right up on the 1 hour here, so.
Yeah, I guess I would just like to end by saying that I heard and acknowledged Mr. Cohen and would like to maybe visit with you to understand what you're looking for. I think what I heard is there some kind of a recap, tactics used, what things went as planned, what were the learnings, if any, and how might that change protocol in a future situation. And so we might visit later.
All right, any other business? All right, hearing none, I'll say this meeting of the Police Advisory and Oversight Board stands adjourned. Our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, July 14th, 2022 at 5 p.m.